Hey everyone, welcome to the Lost in Life podcast with me, Keshav Bhatt, and my special guest today, Anna Garcia. We're going to be talking about relationships and finding your purpose, whether you've been through a breakup, a difficult time, or you're already in a meaningful relationship. So keep listening. Just to give you a bit of an intro, if you're listening and you've not seen the previous interview that I've done with Anna, Anna is one of my favorite coaches out there. I have sent so many people to your relationships intensive event. I keep telling anyone who has any kind of struggle when it comes to self-love, relationships, specifically women as well, because I know that's who you tend to work with most. To your event. So Anna is a relationships expert, a coach, an author, best-selling author. I'm reading your book at the moment. And she runs this incredible free event. It's free, right?
Yeah, it is.
Called Relationships Intensive. And I'll let you tell everyone what Relationships Intensive is all about.
Yeah, sure. So, Kesha, thank you so much for having me back on board. It's a delight, absolute pleasure, and an honor to be one of your favorite coaches. Woohoo! So, Relationships Intensive is a one-day event for women, and it is designed around, whether someone is married, single, complicated, confused, or all of the above. It's for them. It is about coming along and finding out what on earth is going on in my relationships and why is it happening. And then, people come along and essentially their experience is, phew, I'm not the only one. I'm not going crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. And oh my goodness, me too, and it's such an awesome sensation that, when crazy person comes out, I always give the example that a lot of the time we're very zen when we're single, but then when we're in a relationship, that crazy part of us comes out, right? So we have a good giggle and a laugh about the craziness. So it's a great platform for people to come and connect and to feel like they're not the only ones. And then from there onwards, look at, right, how serious is it, or what is it that we really need to address? And then we take it from there.
I love it. I have so many questions for you based on reading your book as well. But I guess where I want to start, and I say this to everyone who comes on the podcast, especially for those people who have never heard of Anna Garcia, why should people listen to you? Why do you have a story to tell? And what makes you a credible authority for the person listening right now?
I guess because I've messed up enough times, probably more than the average person that walks into my room again and again and again when it comes to relationships. I've been on the cynical side, I've been on the helpless side, I've been on the hopeless side, and ultimately never given up. That's been the thing. And people say, Anna, why do you do relationships? And it really stems from a background growing up from an immigrant family and not having, the resources at home, emotional resources at home. And so my story began very, very young, growing up with a mom who didn't have a lot of emotional resilience, depression, anxiety, all of that. So never knowing where things were going to go, really. And I come from the platform that each person is a CEO in their life. They're a chief energy officer. So, wherever you go, your energy is always introducing itself before you do. So I learned from a very young age the influence that you have on the people around you. And why I focus on women per se is because I believe that in the home, women lead the way with the energy. We were always kind of tiptoeing around our mother when she wasn't very happy. Everyone tiptoes around mum depending on her mood, right? So I know that if we impact mum or the wife or the girlfriend, it will have a massive impact on everyone else as well. Over the years, I've been facilitating now for over 16, 17 years. I've lost count, to be honest. And now running large events with hundreds of women in that room, and now having thousands and thousands of women, and really identifying what the key problems are around relationships and being able to bring some light to that is an extraordinary honor and privilege. And that's what we do on a monthly basis. We fill up rooms. We run our events once a month, and they're packed. We have so much fun, and from there, lots of women go on to our advanced programs, and lives are really changing. So, why listen? Well, the results really speak for themselves. People keep coming back. We've got mastery clients, advanced grads who keep coming back and coming back to our events. And it's because it's become like a lifestyle for them. You know, it's like, and if I go to the gym 3 times, 4 times a week, why am I not going to put myself into a system which is educating me around relationships? Because it's one of those things that can trip you up a lot. And if the quality of your relationships aren't in a great space, it will have an impact on your whole life in general. So it's not just romantic relationships, but relationships in business, partnerships, you know, work, everything. It has an impact, particularly the way that you're relating to yourself is therefore how people are going to relate to you. So that's pretty much something that I'm nailing with time. I can never say that anyone nails it for good unless you're an avatar of some sort. But we're all on that journey. And I really, honestly, I've just messed up so many times that it's just developed a sensitivity within me and a vulnerability to be able to say, you know what, hands up, I've messed up, you know, and learning how to communicate non-reactively, rather straightforwardly, and being able to have those conversations. So yeah, that's pretty much why Anna Garcia in relationships, perhaps.
Yeah. And, you know, just for people that are listening, the reason I say that you're like one of my favorite coaches out there is, number one, and you said this in your book, it's not about how much you know, it's about how much you care. And you just said to me that a person's energy introduces itself before they do. And I still remember the first time we met. I didn't really know who you were as such that much because we met via an introduction for the previous interview we did. But you could immediately feel this magnetism, this charisma, this just a warmth. This is like a real warm energy. And it's so great to be around that. You know, I've sent people that I love towards you to learn from you and your programs. And in the book, like, I really appreciate now what it must have taken for you to choose to be that way, because I think it's easy to be bubbly and happy and smiles if you've never been through things in life. But when you've been through things and you've made the choice that, listen, this is not a moment for me to get bitter. This is a moment for me to get better and to choose more and more love within my own tank first, so that it lights the people up around me. And that's like a huge reason. I think there's a lot of coaches out there now, and I don't get that same authenticity from a lot of them. And I think what you're doing is really, really powerful. Since the podcast is all about like feeling lost, feeling stuck, confused, lost in life, like what have been some of those moments for you where even now you kind of look back and you think, man, hey, that was really sucky. Because I'm a big believer that, you know, when we show each other our scars, that's when we really connect. And so I'd love to hear, like you talked about some of those moments where you messed up. For the person who hasn't read your book, which if you're hearing about it for the first time, go check it out on Amazon. It's called Blossom and Become. I'll leave a link in the description. But yeah, what are some of those moments where you kind of really messed up, and what was that like for you? Could you just retell some of them?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I remember waking up one morning with the sun coming up and the birds singing, and feeling resentful for the sun coming up, and feeling resentful that the birds were singing, and not understanding why they were so happy. And at the same time, then suddenly feeling really guilty at the blasphemy of it all. Like, how dare I resent the sun coming up, right? I was digging my heels. I did not want to live. I did not want to see another day. That's how rock bottom I'd reached. This was the point where I'd come out of, very recently come out of studying a degree. I was unemployed. I'd recently come through a process of paternity issues where I'd learned at the age of 24 that my dad wasn't my dad. And it's one of the worst things I could ever, you never imagine how bad something is until it happens to you. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, being daddy's little girl and then suddenly realizing, you know. So it was one of the lowest points of my life. And on top of that, ending a relationship, because things always happen in threes or fours, relationship, being unemployed, you know, paternity issues, like everything you could possibly imagine. And I just remember laying there going, what is the point? I don't want to do this. I'm digging my heels. I couldn't see a way out of that darkness. It was so dark and it was so sad. It was just so heavy. And I just remember in that moment, I don't know where this thought came from, or this voice in my head came from. And it just said, get up. It is not about you. Get up. It is not about you. Like, I was like, get up. It is not about you. Like, okay, what does that look like? And then the next thought, and it was about trusting your intuition, you know? And then my next thought was an ex-employer of mine or an ex-colleague of mine. It was my manager at the time, the previous job. And I just felt like, you know, let me just call him. Let's see how he's doing. And he'd set up his own company at the time. And it just so happens that in that moment of absolute grief, I had a thought come through, which was, do you know what? It's not about you. I thought, shit, okay, if it's not about me, then how am I going to, you know, what can I do about this? All right. So that was the next person that came into my thought process. And I trusted that. And I just gave that person a ring. It so happened that that person at that time needed precisely my skill set. And I just remember to this day that whenever I've been, no matter in how much grief and a thought has come through and I've trusted that thought or that feeling or that intuition and I've actioned on it, it's always ended up being that I was being needed somewhere. And the work that we then went on to do for the following 2 years allowed me and supported me to set up my own practice, my own, you know, my own business. But that was a key moment. And I just, you know, for anyone listening to this, no matter how dark or bleak it gets, right, there is always the next day, as long as you can just put one foot in front of the other. And I remember, like, seriously, digging my heels. I did not want to get out of bed. And it got so heavy and lonely and it feels like no one can do anything for you. And that was a moment I just made a decision. I just get up, you know. Mel Robbins has a wonderful 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right, technique, which I now apply very often. I didn't have it then, right? And now that's just what I do. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, regardless of emotion, just do that and just follow that gut feeling or that, you know. And it's incredible how many lives were then impacted because he was working with unemployed and doing a whole load of things, and it was incredible. It gave me a lifeline. Although I was quote unquote helping so many people, actually I was saving myself in that moment as well. So yeah, that was one really, really hard, bleak moment. And it was where several things came together and I just completely lost my purpose. And it's in those moments where if you're listening, life will give you a little nudge and there's always somewhere where you can be of use, of value, and your whole life perspective can change.
It's interesting because it I guess it makes me ask, actually, before I go to that question, something you said there was like, a big realization for you was it's not about you.
Yeah.
And I saw, like, there's so many memes and stuff out there that play on this, but I love this idea that like half of the stuff that you're struggling with, maybe even 80% for some of you that are listening, it's just your own doing. And if you can learn to get out of your own way and change the way you see the world. You know, Wayne Dyer says it, like, the way you see the world changes. And that sounds like a really big shift for you, where the penny dropped in a way. And you started to see it as one of my favorite writers, a woman called Jan Robinson. She says this, like, it's not about you. Like, that person had a human moment, but we make it about us. We internalize those struggles and internalize those things. And we decide, oh, the reason that, you know, my mum did this back in 10 years ago when she was a completely different person in a certain scenario was this, and it means this about me, and now I'm X and this is my identity.
Yeah.
But actually, that person just had a human moment. Even if it's, you know, in a relationship, you had an argument, even as bad as your partner cheated on you, like, let's even go there. It's a human moment. And yes, that violates trust and boundaries and all those things. But ultimately, like I said earlier, there really is a profound choice. And it's really heartwarming to hear that you talk about that as well. So the question I had on that actually was, what are some of the common patterns? Because how many people have you worked with at this point, like
Thousands,
in your events?
Thousands.
So you've worked with thousands of women. What are some of the common patterns and struggles or mistakes that you see people making?
Yeah, I mean, leading on from that mistake that I was making in that moment is that I was making it about why me instead of what for. So victim, when we fall into depression, it's a victim pattern, and we all do it. We fall into a blame. So we're either blaming parents or something or someone, and we're falling into that pattern of victim, which means we feel powerless, and it's a very powerless energy. And the question generally is, why is this happening to me? When we're able to shift that and have that cognitive shift into moving it from why me into what for, and we just open up, even if it's hard in that moment, just open up to, okay, I can't see what for right now, but I always say, God, please, when you're ready, I'm ready to see what for. I know I can't see it right now. This is really complicated. This is really sucks. Okay. But I know you wouldn't give me something, or universe or source.
That's funny, because I think I just read that bit in your book about the prayer. So yeah.
You just want to be like, I don't see it right now, but I'm willing to see it. And I think that's the miracle. The miracle there is a shift in thinking, right? And I think it's Marianne Williamson that says that so beautifully. A miracle is a shift in thinking, and it's going in that moment from, right, why me to what for? So one of the biggest patterns that people, when they come to me, they're saying to me, why did he leave me? Or why did he betray me? Or why after 35 years, or after 10 years, or after 2 years, after 2 months, whatever it is, And one of the biggest mistakes is, how long do you choose to stay in that space? Because some people, way beyond the age of 25, which, by the way, beyond the 25 mark, you're not allowed to blame your parents anymore, And it's just after that, you're wasting your time, right? So
come on, you're an adult.
Yeah, I think it's Anthony Robbins that says that really beautifully. If you hit 25, you no longer have the right to blame your parents. But when you shift from why me to what for, it changed my whole world, because suddenly when I got out of that bed that day and I made that phone call, and then I went, wow, I almost didn't do that. And then I ended up in this training room in front of all these unemployed people, changing lives, getting them back into work, and the ripple effect of all of that within weeks. I was like, whoa, I was like tiny, like this close to making it all about me. And in that moment, I went, wow, for me, the biggest ripoff, and this is one of the biggest mistakes we make, the biggest ripoff is not acknowledging what we came here for. And it's forgetting, and we get so much into our own little world of what's not working for me, and me, when in reality, as long as you're doing that, and this was the key message that came through to me in that moment when I was in bed, it's not about you, meant, later on I realized it meant, Anna, you were born for something, and there's a group of people assigned to you. And as long as you are in your head and in your own little world, you are not able to serve that group of people. You are ripping that group of people off, whether it's a family, a community, a world, a nation, whatever it is, there's been a group of people assigned to you. And I really do, from a spiritual perspective, I believe that, yeah. And that's why I believe there's no competition, there's no rivalry, because whoever you're supposed to work with, you're always going to work with. You just need to get yourself out of the way so that you can allow yourself to be that person, so they can see you, right? So you can align. So that was one of the biggest mistakes, when people stay stuck in the why me. Yeah.
Yeah. The difference between life happening to you versus for you, right? Everything is serving that divine calling or purpose. Or even if you don't, you're not somebody who's religious or spiritual, just seeing it as a mental block that you're creating this victimhood. And you're only going to add confirmation to that, right? What are some of the other common patterns that you see coming up for people especially in like your mastery program, as you get to know them more? What are some of the, like if you would say the 5 big things that really, so you said one, which is, I guess, victimhood, why me?
Yeah.
But what are some of the other common
for sure
blockages?
Yeah. Another one is lack of self-trust, So this is where I was saying that we can be quite Zen mastery when we're on our own. And then the moment we're going to a relationship, I call it the crazy psycho bitch, comes out, and everyone finds it hilarious, but it's true. This other crazy person comes out, and it's like, oh my God, I don't recognize myself. What's going on? And really what's happening is we have a habit, no matter how powerful and independent a person can be, if they have codependent tendencies, they will go into a relationship and they start to lose themselves. They have, you look after that. My happiness is now your responsibility. And love becomes very conditional. It becomes very, well, I'll be happy with you as long as you dot, dot, dot. I love me the way that I expect you to love me, treat me the way I expect you to treat me. And it just gets really, really hardcore. So a lot of the time what happens is people lose their essence. They, this is why I called it blossom and become, because I believe that individuals, human beings, are like a rose. When they're grounded and rooted in their own garden, they blossom, they become, and the bee comes to them. What happens is we rip ourselves out of the ground and we go running after the bee. So we lose our source of vibrancy, color, fragrance, all our natural stuff. And then we wonder why the world seems like it's collapsing on us. Well, we're not rooted, we're not grounded, we've handed ourselves over. And we do that because essentially we're not trusting ourselves to keep ourselves grounded in our own garden. And we think, oh no, that person's garden is better. So we fly off after them, losing ourselves in that. So essentially that boils down to not trusting myself. When I don't trust myself, it means that I tend to hand my happiness over to somebody else. There you go. You're responsible for my heart now. The other thing that we do is we run non-trusting patterns, and these are the most common ones. We run a belief system that says, I don't trust myself, others, or the world. And how that shows up, Keshav, is that we tend to not allow others to help us feel safe. We try and go it alone a lot. Okay. And nowadays we've got especially in women, we have an epidemic of very beautiful, successful, independent women who are just totally like in this crazy, I've got it, I don't need help, kind of mode, right? Go, 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 go. And, emasculating the men in their life, if you like. There's no room for masculine energy to come in. And then they're coming to me going, I don't know why I'm still single. I'm like, well, you're not trusting yourself. You're not trusting anybody. You're not letting anyone in, So this is a big problem. If you ask me what the key issues are around the mastery, I'm dealing with a beautiful client group. They're powerful in their own right. They're independent, successful, beautiful women, struggling with trust issues, which can go one of two ways. Either I hand myself completely over to you and I become codependent on you, and that pushes that person away, or I push you away before you do it. Yeah. So the other way that pattern manifests is that we will unconsciously set people up to fail. Feel betrayed and then say, see, told you, couldn't trust you. There you go. There's another one. And so there's an undercurrent that wants to be right about the fact that people can't be trusted. Yeah. And we'd rather be right than be happy. Because 95% of our behavior is running this, I don't trust myself, others, or the world. So these are the kind of patterns that people display, and they come back to me and go, see, there's another one. See, I told you I can't trust people. See, that's what men, especially women about men, that's what men. I'm like, well, imagine you're living your life to fulfill on that prophecy. How about that? How's that going for you? You keep finding evidence again and again and again for it. So I could go on and on and on. I don't know how many you've written there. I think I've given you about 3, 4.
So, yeah, I mean, you've definitely covered quite a few. I'm also, my brain is going off on crazy tangents. What you're talking about there reminds me of, and I'm pretty sure it is, the attachment style stuff, like anxious and avoidant tendencies, where you're kind of either completely becoming clingy or you're completely pushing people away. One thing that I was interested in that you talked about kind of indirectly there was trusting yourself, but also maintaining like healthy boundaries within a relationship, because I think there's a lot of stuff out there for breakups. There's a lot of stuff out there for finding the right person, attracting the right person. In terms of like long-term relationships, for the person who's listening, who wants their honeymoon period to last forever, I guess even a question on that is like, is that realistic? Can you expect that? Is it always going to be sunshine and rainbows, or like, can you live at that very peak of fulfillment? And also like the difference between a good relationship versus a great relationship. I know I've coached people before they get into a good relationship, so it's stable, like the other person ticks most of the boxes, but there's like at a certain point, maybe like a year or two in, the spark kind of just withers a little bit, and they fall into those patterns you described, where those rules come into play and the conditions of love. So yeah, I guess the question I'm asking here is, how do you sustain a epic relationship, and is that realistic?
It seems like good, great, or how can we keep great long term? And I think the question really is, how can I keep that long term with myself? Because the relationship outside of me is completely and 100% dependent on my relationship with self? That's the number one. Am I maintaining my relationship with myself? That's number one, in order to give that relationship the biggest chance of doing that. Then let's move into outside of us and go into that relationship. We need to bear in mind that, like anything, we're going to go through ebbs and flows, and we're going to go through certain situations. Particularly the first 2 years. I have an uncle who's a neuroscientist, and he talks about the chemistry and relationships and the brain and everything that happens. And we once had an amazing conversation. He's based back home in Latin America, and he explained to me, he says, you do realize that the first 2 years of a relationship, it's pretty much chemistry. Did you know that? It's like pure chemistry. And this is why a lot of relationships struggle at the 2-year mark, right? Forget 7 years for now, 2-year mark, right? And I'm like, you're freaking kidding me. He goes, yeah, because that's when the relationship really begins. That's when it's no longer about the butterflies and the chemistry. That's when you really choose each other and you start going forward. Generally speaking, it's a 2-year mark from a chemical basis, right? So imagine you're dealing with that already. It's like, who's coming into the relationship? Is it a bunch of hormones? I think the essence to an ongoing great relationship is who's going into the relationship in the first place. Because if you've got a limper, i.e. someone who's really anxious going in with an avoidant, that's a formula for disaster. It's very rarely that works. If you're going in as a limper, let's call it, because you've got all these stuff that you haven't resolved within yourself, and then you're very likely to attract another limper. You're going to go in and you're just both limpers, right? And so that's another conversation. I would say that the key, Keshav, in terms of sustaining a long-term great relationship is, how are you sustaining your relationship with yourself? Are you trusting yourself? Because if you are trusting yourself, here's the thing. This is the analogy that I always use. If you look at a bird on a tree, she never worries about the branch underneath her feet breaking. Why? Because she trusts her own wings. It's got nothing to do with the tree. So when you trust yourself to that degree, it doesn't really have such a holding on you what goes on to happen in that relationship. It can fizzle out, it can die, it can grow, it can expand, it can come to an end, it can conclude, whatever, but you're still trusting yourself solidly and you're able to hold your ground. Yeah. And that's so important. But ultimately, moving forward from good to great, I would say, what are your top values? Are they aligning with that person's top values? And are you honoring those values on an ongoing basis? Freedom being a really big part, freedom, sensitivity, communication being really important parts of this, You want to get that 2 whole universes are coming together when it comes to a relationship, like complete 2 total universes. And it's such an art to get these to work, and but there are so many elements. But yeah, can we expect that the relationship forever is going to be incredible and amazing? No, it's like any business or any endeavor. It's going to have really rough days. It's going to have rough times, Sales peak, sales don't. This happens, performance. And
I think a good one to throw in there as well is like you also have very mediocre days where you're doing the laundry and you're folding clothes and watching Big Brother or something.
Yeah, and you've got, and then you've got your own personal performance. You've got your own days where you're going to have better days than other days personally, which is going to bring into the relationship. You're going to have days where people are going to feel a bit more independent, a bit more clingy, a bit more, so many factors that can come to play in a relationship, depending on what's going on in your career, what's going on with your health, that's going to come in and play in that relationship. And I think it's coming down to, what are your original agreements? What are your values? And are they being honored? And then we've got the whole idea of an old model of love and a new model of love, and that's a whole other conversation. A lot of the reason why, or a big part of the reason why, a lot of relationships don't work today nowadays, Keshav, is because basically we have only had love in marriage for a very small amount of time. So it's only been really in the last 150 years that love has become a part of the institute of marriage. It used to just be like a social construct, different reasons, right? So if you think about it, we've not been highly trained in how to love. Our grandparents and our great-grandparents have been kind of the pioneers of this. So if you think about it, how experts are we? So we've inherited a set of rules around love, which is very, very conditional. It's a new model of love, which is the conversation we're now entering to. Is very different. It's a very different conversation. It's an invitation to love instead of a demand for love. Yeah. And
Mm.
it's very much based on freedom and sensitivity. And there's all these changes in roles as well, because the masculine, we had certain expectations of them in the past. Now it's changed and everyone's kind of confused. The feminine and the masculine, who does what and what are the roles? And before it used to be very simple. Yeah, right. Everyone
Yeah.
knew what their role was. Now it's like, what's going on? And the men are kind of trying to find their place and the women are trying, and then you've got everything in between, right? So ultimately, we're entering into a whole new model of love, which is, based on sensitivity and freedom and integrity. And that's a very different paradigm. So I believe that in terms of rule of thumb, are we educating ourselves in relationship? Are we allowing ourselves to be guided? Are we open to learning new ways, like the new way of loving, and letting go of what we've inherited from our parents and our grandparents, which not necessarily is going to support the way we can love our partners today?
It's definitely an art. I like to think of love as like any relationship. There's an art of loving somebody. So at the beginning, I'm learning to play the piano at the moment. I suck.
Nice.
Like I absolutely suck. Nobody asked me to play because all I can play is Ding Dong Merrily on High, and everyone in my house. But at the beginning, you go through a period where you kind of suck, but you got to follow certain parameters. But the more you practice, the more I get to know my particular piano, the way the keys feel and how my hands need to be positioned. And over time, just like a painter drawing, you begin to be able to express yourself more, and you're more artistic with it. And I like to think of a relationship as an art form, because when I get to know you, even since the last time we spoke, you have changed and I have changed.
Sure.
And so I have to adapt to who am I? And how is Anna? Like, what's going on for you right now? And how can I give value? How can I relate to you right now in this moment and make sure that, if this is a dance, I'm here, I'm present, but I'm also moving with the new dance moves, or, you might have like a new hairstyle, or you're wearing something different, or you've got a new tango, whatever it might be. And it really does take persistent practice to get to know, and I know from my own relationship, to get to know someone at a very deep level and understand, hey, you know what? Like, if I'm late, even though it's not a big thing for me, that's like a deal. That's not a deal breaker, but I'm infringing on that person's values, or this person really appreciates words of affirmation. And so I need to make sure that I'm giving that. Even though that's what I want, I got to make sure this is what they need. And you know what? This is why the game changes. In 10 years, it may not be that. It might be quality time, or it might be physical touch, or it might be family time, whatever. But the landscape is always changing, because I think a lot of people forget this. Like, don't hold on to the image of who you were and who they were at the beginning. Like, it's always changing. You always, like, I joke to my partner, like, I'll do crazy, ridiculous things because I want any guy that comes up to you and is interested. Because let's not forget, like, people are interested. Just because you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean they're not. Like, is he going to wash your dishes for you? Is he going to come and like shine? Like, I'll do all of those things and be present. And then what you got for me, fam? Because I guarantee there's no one out there that's going to do those things. So yeah, definitely, like, it's such an art form. And I really love what you said about old versus new models of love. And I see in my own experiences as a young South Asian person, like how those clash as well. Those generational differences of what the previous generation's idea of what a relationship should be, and how that family dynamic affects like new relationships and what our expectations are. And there's always like a tug of war between what is expected of different people. So like, it's a really powerful thing that you've shared with us there about that old and new model of love. And it's exciting for me because we're pioneers. Like, we get to make the rule book.
Yeah.
Like, there's no restriction. Like, we get to create the playbook and teach ourselves, like, well, how do we want to love? That's a great question to ask. Yeah. What does it look like? A question I wrote down actually was, you talked about self-love. What does that look like for you? Because I think self-love is a massive word.
Okay. So I get asked that question a lot. And as I say, remember, it's very easy to practice these things when you're in it, when you're not in a relationship, and then when you're in a relationship, all your triggers get set off, right? So I think it's just so important. I think the greatest art of self-love is know what is important to you, what is the most important thing to you, and what are your non-negotiables, what are you not willing to negotiate, and stand so clear in those non-negotiables. And then you bring that into the relationship. You come ready, like, look, this is me. These are my non-negotiables, right? Especially if someone is single, a lot of the time what we find is that we negotiate our non-negotiables to try and fit in a relationship that is not going to work, because we're negotiating things that shouldn't be negotiated. And very often we do that in relationships as well. We're going very clear about who we are, and then eventually we end up totally losing ourselves inside of that relationship. So the ultimate self-love for me is staying true to me. And that means that, what is my commitment? So let's say, for example, when you use the example of, washing the dishes and all these kind of things, which is beautiful, that's inside of your commitment, perhaps, and one of your top values being service. Right? So you're honoring that part of you, right? But if for someone else, that is not a top priority for them, and it's not a top value for them, it would be a very different scenario, it'd be a very different conversation, right? So what is it that is not, it's just not negotiable for you? And then whoever comes along, if they're not able to align with those no-negotiables, they're just not your people. That is it. And we need to be that kind of clear, because the reason why we come up with problems later on in our relationships is that we ignore red flags. They were there the whole time and we ignore them. And so non-negotiables, they don't meet them, not my people. Next, it's very, very, very simple. What is important to me? And always asking yourself the question, does this honor me? Does this honor me? Am I being quiet right now in this conversation or this debate with my partner or this argument? Am I being quiet out of, wanting to withhold and not wanting to stand and honor who I am and just to save, to create peace? Or am I really coming from a space of honoring myself? Always asking yourself that question. Hang on a minute, does this really work for me? And really check in, not with pride, but with your higher self. Does this work for me? Does this honor me? And if the answer is yeah, you'll find that the actions consistent with that will surprise you. What you'd be willing to do inside of that is quite shocking. Like, wow, I never imagined I'll do this for anybody. But it's honoring me and it's honoring my commitment for this relationship. Yeah. And then sometimes it may also look like a clear, no, I'm not prepared to do that. And you may have to deal with the upset of your partner. And it doesn't mean I don't love you. And it doesn't mean I'm not committed to this relationship. That just doesn't honor who I am. It doesn't work for me. Yeah. I believe that is a real, and that's an art. And it takes for many people a long time to learn to trust themselves enough to say no when they mean no, and it doesn't honor them. And it's okay that there are going to be people in your life that are going to be a little bit upset with you when you say no. And some people are so afraid of that. It's like, no, you need to be okay with that. That's me. I need to love and honor me first.
And I guess that really comes back to what you said at the beginning, right? It sounds simple, but it's not easy. Is honoring, like you said, honoring self and knowing you, like, these are my values. These are my non-negotiables. I have a client who, hopefully she'll be listening to this later on. We sat down and we worked on, like, okay, so write down, and it's a good exercise for anyone listening and you want to know, like, what are my non-negotiables? Here's like a really easy exercise. Number one, just write down everything you want in a partner, as much detail as you can think of, like all of your tents. So emotionally, spiritually, sexually, like everything. What kind of dates do you go on? What do they look like? Do they need to have certain, do they need to have a beard? Do they need to have like long hair? What is it? And then go through that list. And once you've got everything down, highlight the things that are a must. Like some of the things you think, I'd like them to be a rich footballer, but maybe not in this lifetime. I'll settle for, nice paying job. But what are from there the non-negotiables? And the flip is at the end you say, well, who do I need to be to both attract and maintain a relationship with this kind of person? Because like you said, literally on the front cover of your book, I don't know if it can be any more clear. Like, you can't attract what you want. Like, you have to blossom so that the bee comes. What in your experience have you been doing to to navigate some of those, and what have been some of like the difficult moments for you as well as a person who's, I'm assuming, in a relationship, where you've had to navigate those boundaries? Because I think the longer that you're with someone, you're constantly evolving, and so those boundaries shift and change, and those moments and conversations have to continually be renegotiated.
Yeah, Keshav, it's a great question. I'm really glad that you brought up, because that's probably at the core of my conversation right now. I believe that successful relationships don't mean that they last a lifetime. Successful relationships can come to an end. They can have a sell-by date, and that's actually the conversation that was my 2018 conversation. For me, got to a point in my world. This is my journey where I outgrew, and my journey became so. The speed and the velocity of my journey became such that it no longer served me for me to be in a relationship that I was in. It served me up until a certain point, and then I began to feel that it wasn't anymore. And then it was a set of conversations. So and you'll see this actually through my whole book, yeah, where I've had several relationships that were beautiful relationships, and then it got to a point after 2, 3, 4, 5 years where it just felt for me like my soul was saying, time to move on. And that was my personal journey. And one of the hardest things to navigate was, what's my family going to say? One of my hardest things to navigate was, well, by now, Anna, you should be married and have children and have 2.5 kids and blah, 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 right? And for me, and this is a journey that mirrors in many people's lives, is honoring what's the most important thing for me right now, my journey, what I'm about, and being able to have the discernment to look within and go, yeah, actually, this relationship can successfully complete or be ended now. And having that mutual conversation, that mutual agreement, and going, right, I think this is where we part. And having those incredible endings, actually, because it doesn't have to be anything disastrous or dramatic or anything like that.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be that scene out of a notebook. Like, it doesn't have to be drama, guys.
No, and just having these incredible, it's not a failure for me. And, one of the biggest breakthroughs that I had to have at the end of, last year, was, I'm the relationships coach. Surely I should be in a relationship. As you said,
that was going to be my next question. Actually.
Yeah, and
I imagine there was a lot of pressure of,
oh my,
the ego around, like, oh, I'm the person who helps people fix relationships or heal and have great relationships, and I'm going through a breakup. Like, what?
Yeah, or I should just keep this relationship because I'm the relationship coach, and therefore when I get interviewed or people say, well, I'm assuming you're in a relationship, or in order for you to qualify as a relationships coach you need to be in a relationship. It's like, and it took me a while to get that. It's like, wow, the nonsense and the ego, right, around that. And then I came to be able to tell the truth and go, actually, there's nothing more liberating than telling the truth, that a relationship coming to an end doesn't mean it's a failure of you or the relationship. It's a completion of an era for me. And at the moment, to be able to travel light, this is how I call it at the moment in my world right now, it's just it's foundational. It's at the epicenter of my work that I'm doing right now and all the changes that I'm going through. So that is something that, hands up, and it's so liberating for so many women when they come to me and they go, really? I'm like, yeah, there is no shame in you living your life according to your values and what's important to you. And we're living in a brand new time of relationships models, right? And it doesn't need to look a certain way. So it's really exciting times. Yeah, it's really, really exciting times. So I'm glad that you asked me that question. There's your answer.
Thank you for
how do I navigate through that?
Answering so honestly. This is why you're like one of my favorite coaches. I knew you would come with the realness. What was that moment for you where the penny really dropped and you thought, nah, like, because I imagine, I think the longer that you're with somebody, the more you, like, they become your best friend, right? That's the person you build so many memories with. You really care about this person. At the same time, you really care about and love yourself. And so there's this clash of, you got that feeling in your stomach, like, oh man, something is not quite fitting here. And like you said, there's always the flags, but what's that moment for you where you thought, yeah, this is what I need to do. This is the road has changed slightly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your heart, your soul always speaks. You always start feeling something doesn't quite feel right. And then we try and ignore it. And, the analogy I love to use is that we're walking down I don't know, a hilly kind of road out there in the outbacks of Australia. I don't know, imagine something like that, really dusty. And you're walking down, the street or the hills. And then suddenly a little tiny little pebble comes rolling down the rocks and hits you, and you're like, ouch. Yeah, that's the first sign. It's like, yeah, maybe I should get off this lane, And then suddenly a bigger stone just comes rolling down and whacks you, and you're like, ouch, that really hurt. But we stay on the same lane. And it's only when a massive boulder comes down and flashes you, squeezes you on the floor, that's when you don't get that maybe it's time to move on, right? And what I have learned is that with experience and with time, it doesn't get easier because you've always got more at stake. So I always had a reason why not to leave relationships in the past, for financial reasons or for family, what would they say, or status or whatever, right? And then it comes to a point right this time where it's none of those reasons except my soul is saying it is time to move on. And very often it's really hard to explain. But I just learned to listen to myself, and I know that it's time to move on. And I think the moment is when you wake up in the morning and you just have this weight, and there's this like, yeah, this is not me. This is not me. And it's just because I'm not having the communication that I know I need to have. And it's the dreaded, oh my God, I've got to tell the truth. And you know what? One of the biggest things is we avoid pain. All right. The thing is, pain is mandatory in life. Suffering is optional. So we can face the pain. It's like a hurricane. You see it coming. It's like, oh my God, I'm running away from this hurricane. I'm running away from this hurricane. But you can step into it, deal with it, face solitude in the eye, face sadness in the eye, face the fear of failure, whatever it is in the eye, and step right through it and sit in it. And you'll find that actually the whole time you were suffering because you were trying to avoid a period of pain for yourself and for that person. But actually, me staying somewhere where my heart is no longer wanting to stay is the biggest dishonoring, not just to myself, but to that person. Because I'm not going to be able to be 100% for that person. Today, that person and I are really good friends. We're bestest of friends, yeah? And it allows me to honor that person within this space now, whereas before I couldn't do that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think a big thing that you said there is that I guess it gets to a place where you end up choosing something else rather than choosing yourself every day. And so you wake up and you realize, yo, I need to choose me today. And also, being in that, if you can, let's say you didn't make that choice, you stay with what's comfortable. It's not right for that person because you're not choosing them anymore as well. You're not really like fully committed to the relationship. It kind of reminds me of, I really enjoyed, like, one of my favorite books this year has been from a guy called David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. And this guy, I've seen him around on YouTube and I was like, it's just some like crazy military guy talking about like being really disciplined and stuff. But his story is incredible. He basically went through loads of abuse, like difficulty growing up, went into the army, became a Navy SEAL, and later on became an ultra marathon runner. So running like 100 miles. And he talks about in the book, be uncommon amongst uncommon men. And that, like, I'll be honest with you and everyone listening, it's literally blown my mind because I always thought about like be extraordinary between like that is like in ordinary people, but how this guy took it a level beyond. And he says, yeah, I wanted to be uncommon amongst uncommon men. So Navy SEALs are already like crazy, like different. But he took his mindset to such a level and his path was so deep that even amongst his crew, he wanted to be uncommon. And he says in a podcast I listened to, he was saying, listen, like there's going to be people around you that they don't like that because you going on your path and choosing yourself, it kind of makes them feel bad. It makes them feel a certain way out of no fault of your own because they're measuring themselves against you, or you're kind of saying no to the expectation that you've set as a collective. But it was such a, it's not related to relationships, but it's definitely related to self-love because he just said, like, I'm going to go through pain every day. And he describes in one chapter, like how he ran an ultra marathon with no preparation and broken legs. His kidneys failed and he still kept on going. And he was using the analogy of Roger Bannister, who ran the first 13-minute mile. And people were like, no, you can't do it. Your body's going to break. And they were saying the same thing to him. And I think like that is a tremendous act of courage, what you described. You know, no one's ever going to give you any plaudits for it. No one's ever going to kind of say, oh my God, Anna, like, here's a medal. Like, well done, you're so courageous today. But that is what self-love looks like. And I really wanted to take a moment here to like acknowledge you and celebrate you for taking that like courageous step with complete like vulnerability.
Thank you.
The other question I had based on that was, so you're this relationships person. Everyone knows you. Everyone knows your partner, I'm assuming. And you go through this breakup that you've initiated or for whatever reason. Where do you go from there? Like, what does Anna Garcia do to get over a breakup in 2018? Because that to me is really interesting because you've learned so much about relationships. What were your practices or thoughts or things that you thought, okay, this is what I need to do now to really heal rather than just recover?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I had to allow the emotions to run through, right? So if that meant crying and crying, because obviously there's a grievance. There was a period of grievance. Did it stop me from doing my work? Nope. It was actually part of it's very often my most successful, my most performing days or events are those when I'm in raw pain, believe it or not.
Yeah,
because
same.
I can connect, right? I can connect with people on a whole new level. The level of empathy, the sensitivity, I don't know what happens, right? But it's just the whole, so I know what it's like to be in a really like, it's just raw pain wanting to come through me. So I'll let the tears come out. It doesn't need to go into drama or anything. It's just literally, I'm in pain. So it's the pain of loss, it's the pain of grief, and I'll allow it to just come out as many times as often as it needed to, and then I'll be on the phone. Hey, this is Anna Garcia. And it was incredible, the performance on a day like that, compared to an average day, right? And then my bestest friends could not believe it. Like, I'll tell them my targets for the day and I was exceeding my targets, and yet they know. I'll send them a picture, possibly just take a look at my eyes, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And they're like, wow, like seriously. And I'm like, no, you just need to get on with it. Why? Because it's the same thing. It's not about me. It's about that person. So on the one hand, it was allowing myself to grieve. It was allowing myself to go through the emotions. And one thing that it allows me to share with people who come to me and go, how do I do this? I'm in so much pain. I just want to call him and get him back. I'm like, listen, you need to understand you're going to go through, I call them grieving contractions. So very often you're dealing with different parts of you. You're dealing with the attachment of a relationship as well. So you have a commitment to let a relationship go, but there may be parts of you that are completely attached to the routine of seeing someone, to the habits that you had together. And they can become quite addictive. So there's the attachment side, there's the addiction side, there's the physical addiction side as well, depending what hobbies you shared together and things like that. So there's going to be parts of you that literally it's like letting go of sugar or letting go of cigarettes or alcohol. Your body's literally going to physically go, yep, okay, now's a good time for a cigarette. And you're like, no, remember the commitment is not. So you need to be okay with these grievance contractions. And they're going to be moments where they just come and you have these impulses of, oh, I need to call this person. I need to get back with them, or I need to, and then you're like, no, remember the commitment. And it's just another part of you that is, that little you that is used to, these habits and the physical side and all of that aspect. So yeah, it's about living through the emotion and knowing that this will also pass. And you'll be surprised. Everyone runs their own processes. I've gone through so many, to be honest. None of them get easier, but I've gone through so many that it just becomes, the periods are intense, but they're shorter. And they're shorter because you now know how to disassociate or separate suffering from pain, drama from reality. Okay, this is what I'm going through. This is what's happened. I don't need to add anything else to it,
I think that's such a massive word, like drama. Because like you said, you can look at it as oh my God, like you said earlier, why is this happening to me? Or you can look at it as, this is just how things are kind of playing out. Feels like a really good place to wrap up today's conversation. But I also wanted to just add in here about those contractions. Like, interestingly, losing someone that's close to you is like losing a limb. So like if you literally had your arm cut off, like how long would you rest and recover? You'd go to the physio, you'd spend time really healing, and trying to like learn to walk without that limb. So it makes sense to like treat it the same way. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for all of your time and your energy today, like all the wisdom, the vulnerability, the courageousness. I'm really enjoying your book. Where can people find you if they're looking for you on social media and all that kind of jazz? And how does the relationships intensive thing work for those of you who are in London or in the UK and they want to come down and say hello in person?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's relationshipsintensive.com. That's the website. And Facebook is Anna Garcia. And Instagram is Anna Relationships Int. So,
Awesome.
so yeah, I mean, if they want to come down to the event, relationshipsintensive.com, we've always got an event coming up and they can sign up for free. And what I do is I usually, pick up the phone and, hey, how you doing? Thank you for registering. Let's have a quick chat. I want to know more about what's going on with you. Why are you coming and spending a whole day with me? And then you can have the chance to have a chat with me and stuff like that.
I love that personal touch. And the Instagram is popping off. Like, I follow you as well. And I'm loving the post. So definitely go and check out her stuff. If you do, like, leave a little comment saying, hello, Keshav sent me. Give Anna a little hello. And leave your comments down below with the main insight from today. As I've mentioned before on this podcast, it's not just about what you know, it's about what you do. So that the step from today, if you really want to ingrain the message that we've gained today, comment below, tell us your main insights, and see you in the next episode of the Lost in Life podcast.